This is the first time I'm going to say this on Rev Reads, but I received this book for the pictures. I've reviewed some books with excellent pictures and illustrations on the channel, and I've highlighted those in the past. But this is the first book that I requested for review specifically because when I saw it, I was like, I want to look through all the pictures. And it was totally worth it. And I am super happy to own David A. deSilva's Archaeology and the Ministry of Paul, a visual guide. I think a visual guide to the world of Paul's ministry by highlighting archaeological sites is a great idea. And this is a tremendous blessing to pastors like me who have never had the opportunity to tour those cities that Paul visited. So hats off to Baker Academic as well as the team that worked on this book because it looks great. I also really enjoyed the writing of deSilva, and I found great insights from him into the world of Paul. In fact, I was going back through my notes and everything that I highlighted in this book, and I couldn't find a single complaint or an issue that I had in his writing, and that is so rare for me. So for me, this is a very strong recommendation. And if you have a few more minutes, I would love to tell you a little bit more about what I liked from deSilva's works and some examples of his great insights. Welcome to Rev Reads. If you want to discover more books about the building of church history, about archaeology from the days of Christ, please subscribe to the channel in order to stay up to date with my latest book reviews. Also, like this video, share it with others. It's your likes, your shares that help people know about the work of David deSilva. And I want to say a huge thank you to the Buy Me a Coffee members. It's your support that allows me to cover all of these ongoing costs that keep coming up with in order to produce reviews with Rev Reads. And if you've benefited from this channel, I would love for you to consider supporting Rev Reads at a beginning membership of only $3 a month. Archaeology and the Ministry of Paul, a visual guide. This is rather straightforward in its format. deSilva simply walks the reader through the major locations, sometimes minor ones, in Paul's journeys featured in Acts, which also covers the cities to which Paul sent his letters that make up an awfully lot of our New Testament. So this is a valuable book because it provides historical and archaeological background for Acts as well as the letters of Paul. As a pastor, I will use this book throughout my teaching time whenever I'm walking through the book of Acts. If I'm going through Acts of the Apostles, I will use this book throughout. And if I'm going to begin to prepare to teach on a new epistle or letter from Paul, I'll read the appropriate chapter in this book in my preparation to teach. Now, the locations covered in this book are Tarsus, Damascus and the Arabia, Antioch, that's the Antioch where disciples were first called Christians, Paphos, Perge, Pisidian Antioch, Roman Philippi, Thessalonica, Berea, Athens, Corinth, Ephesus, Colossae, Laodicea, Hierapolis, Miletus, Rhodes, Jerusalem, Caesarea Maritime, Malta, Puteoli, and finally Rome. Whew. So that is covering a lot of ground, and he does it very well. He does a good job of giving the reader also a basic history of each location, as well as its most likely size and flavor during the days of Paul. The illustrations do a great job to drive home all the points that are being made throughout the book. For instance, one aspect of life for the first generation of Christians that was really impressed on me while I was reading The Destroyer of the Gods by Larry Hurtado is the difficulty that all new Christians would have in being seen as traitors to their hometown. It was considered vital that each citizen make their offerings and worship the various deities held in esteem in that city in order to curry favor with the gods, so that you could gain good fortune for future crops, for success for your troops in battle, for health for your babies in childbirth. And when Christians forsook the worship of false gods to worship Christ alone, they were seen as atheists, because they denied the local gods and they were traitors in the eyes of their fellow citizens who believed that it was crucial for the health of their city to worship those gods. And this point is really brought home in archaeology and the ministry of Paul in a much stronger and I would say even more emotional punch. Because what you see in image after image of this book is how these cities were dominated by idols, dominated by temples, controlled by a cultic system. It was truly the heartbeat of their lives. An example also of sort of the fascinating insights that are brought out by deSilva's own research in this book is an influence that might have directed Paul and Barnabas in where they went on their first missionary journey. And it may have been from the advice of their first influential convert. In Acts chapter 13, Sergius Paulus, the proconsul of Paphos, on the island of Cyprus, comes to faith in Jesus Christ. Well, Paul and Barnabas, after their time in Paphos, they leave Cyprus and they journey to Pisidian Antioch. But why that city? It turns out the Paulus family had very deep, influential roots in that city based on our archaeological discoveries. So it's likely that it was the leading of Paulus, either in wanting to see his own family hear the gospel or to use connections he already had in that city in order to help Paul and Barnabas on the next step of their journey. And this early little moment helps to illustrate the support and wisdom that even new believers were lending to Paul and Barnabas at the very beginning of their work and then continued throughout their work. The church is truly a body that needs both new and mature believers to thrive. There are even some good insights into the biblical texts scattered throughout this book, such as when Paul praises the Athenians for being very religious for all their idols stacked upon idols throughout the city. Well, it turns out when he talked about them being very religious, that might not have been praise. It might have been a mocking comment because very religious could also mean superstitious. And if that was Paul's intent, he probably scored some points with the philosophers who came to hear him speak, because they also had similar disdain for the superstitions of Athens. This book also serves as a helpful aid for dating the work of Paul, as Luke wrote about Gallio serving as the proconsul of Corinth. And archaeologists have discovered an inscription that dates his time in Corinth to 51 and 52, helping us to date Paul's missionary work there. Overall, I found this to be an enjoyable, very easy read, with good insights scattered throughout. This would be helpful for anyone who's going to preach or teach through most of Paul's epistles, but especially for those teaching on Acts. I really found this to be a great work. The visuals are fantastic. The content is really good as well. This surpassed my expectations, and I cannot wait for the sequel on the ministry of Jesus.